My Wi-Fi better work this time. Hey, this ain't no Wi-Fi, brother. Okay, this is actual. This is my actual computer. This is connected by wire. Chapter 41. What's up, little V? Hey, yep. Take two. Hey, Sydney, how's it going? How's it going? All right, we're back. Okay, am I still lagging? Is the stream better now? Let me know if there's still buffering. Okay. I don't know what happened. I don't know what just happened. Okay, so we killed the old stream and we started a new one. Hopefully this one is better. Way better? All right. Good. Okay, I don't know what happened last time. Maybe maybe some like back end server crashed on YouTube's side. Oh no, wait, you guys, I'm sorry. Okay. Someone's at the door, so we're gonna have to be right back. All right, be right back. Give me 3 minutes. All right, you guys. Give me 3 minutes. Who's at the door? I'm back. Sorry. That was the FBI at my door. I made those Wakashu and Shudo videos, so they just wanted to knock and check up, see what's going on. I got swatted. No lag, right? We're good now? Good. Let's continue with the story. So he's trying to stop the Hengshan school from continuing on the road because there's an ambush, right? And he's joking with them and stuff like that. Ling Huchong said indignantly, You girls are speaking without knowing what you're talking about. I am a great general. Back in those days, in the battlefield, I routed and killed numerous thieves. The type of killing that makes you shiver with fear, and the air around it would be even filled with a shimmering, murderous aura. If you girls saw it, hey, you will admire me completely. This trivial mountain slope is nothing to look at for me. How can I fall down? You're just talking rubbish. Not good. His foot seemed to have stepped on a small stone, and he fell down. He put both of his hands out, waving them about, trying to grab onto something. The disciples behind him yelped in surprise. Yilin quickly turned back and stuck her hand out to help him. Ling Huchong grabbed her hand, and Yilin used all her strength to pull him upwards. Ling Huchong was now crouching down with his left hand on the ground, supporting himself. He appeared to be very distressed. The disciples behind him were clutching their stomachs, laughing loudly. Ling Huchang said, "My leather boots are too heavy to use for climbing up mountain roads. If I were wearing your hemp shoes, then I guarantee I wouldn't fall down at all. Also, I'm only slipping and falling. What's so funny about that?" Yilin slowly loosened her hand and said, "Yeah, General is wearing riding boots, so it's not comfortable to climb up the mountain." "Of course it's not comfortable, but with my very high prestige, I have to wear these boots. If I were just an ordinary, common person like you people, then I can wear those hemp shoes without any shame," said Ling Hucheng. After hearing him trying to save face at all costs, the disciples all laughed again. By now, a few more groups have arrived at the bottom of the slope, while the first person who had gone up had reached the top of the slope. Ling Hucheng shouted, "This region has the most thieves, stealing chicken and dogs. They don't care at all if the weather is cold. They'll still come out to steal our money. Although you Buddhists don't have too much wealth, be careful. You don't let them steal your hard-earned alms money." Yi Qing giggled and said, "General is here. Those thieves wouldn't dare to show their faces here." Ling Hucheng answered back, Hey, be careful. I see some people at the top lurking around." One of the disciples said, "General, you are talking nonsense. With us around, you're still afraid of a few small-time thieves?" Just as she said this, two female disciples suddenly shouted, "Ayo!" and rolled down the slope. Two female disciples hastily went up and held them. From the front, a few of the female disciples shouted, "The thieves used some projectiles. Be careful." As soon as they said this, another disciple rolled down the slope. Yihu ordered in a loud voice, "Everyone, get down! Be careful of the projectiles!" Everyone quickly crouched down while Ling Hucheng scolded out loudly, "Bold thieves! You don't know that General is here?" Yilin was pulling his arm and worriedly implored, "Quickly, get down!" The disciples in front were shooting their metal bead projectiles from inside their sleeves, but the enemies on the hilltop had concealed themselves behind the rocks again. Not one could be seen, so their projectiles did not find their targets. Dingjing Shutai rushed forward when she heard that there was an enemy at the top. She was jumping over the disciples' head to get ahead. When she arrived behind Ling Hucheng, she also jumped over his head and kept on going forward. Ling Hucheng called out, "This is bad luck, and spat out some saliva. The translator says, "It's bad luck for someone to jump over your head." Okay. He saw Dingjing Shutai waving her big sleeves around as she charged towards the hilltop. She was met by a rain of the enemy's projectiles. Some of the projectiles were trapped, while some were knocked away flying by her sleeves. Dingjing Shutai jumped a few more times and reached the top of the slope. Before she steadied herself, she felt a strong wind. A copper staff was coming towards her head. Hearing the sound of the staff cutting through the air, she knew that the strike was very heavy, so she didn't dare to parry it. She dodged to the side, but at the same time saw two spears coming forward. One was aiming high and the other one low, making the situation very dangerous. The enemy was holding an advantageous position by blocking the mountain pass with three good fighters. Dingjing Shutai shouted, "Shameless!" while pulling out her long sword. Her sword slashed at the two spears and broke them, while the copper staff was swept at her waist. She countered by hitting the top of the staff with her sword to change its direction. Just then, another spear was thrust towards her right shoulder. The female disciples on the slope started to scream in surprise, and large crashing sounds were heard. Apparently, the enemies on the hilltop were pushing big rocks down the slope. Hengshan School's disciples were crowded in the middle of the pass. They were jumping and crouching to avoid the rocks from hitting them, but soon after, some of them were hit and got injured. Dingjing Shutai retreated back 2 steps and ordered, "Everyone turn back, go back down the hill and regroup." She wielded her sword to prevent the enemy from going down, but the enemy still managed to continuously toss more rocks down the slope. Then she heard the sounds of fighting coming from below. Apparently enemies were also waiting for them at the bottom to prevent them from retreating. Oh no, they're trapped. Someone shouted from below, Martial Uncle! Wait. Martial Uncle, the martial arts of the enemies cutting off our escape are strong. We can't go down. Another one shouted, 2 martial sisters are injured. Dingjing Shitai angrily flew down. She saw 2 men wielding sabers, preventing 2 disciples at the back from retreating down the hill. Dingjing Shitai cried out and attacked using her sword. Suddenly, she heard 2 hoo-hoo sounds. 2 small hammers, connected by a long chain, were flying down vertically, attacking the front of her body. Dingjing Shitai lifted her sword to block one of the meteor hammers, while the other one went through and almost hit her head. Dingjing Shitai was startled. Great power! If they were on flat ground, she wouldn't have used her sword to block the hammer. She would have instead launched an attack from the side, but the mountain pass was too narrow, and there was only 2 ways to go, which was either up or down. The enemy twirled his meteor hammers quickly, and the hammers, looking like 2 black clouds, came hurtling towards Dingjing Shitai. Dingjing Shitai was unable to use her clever sword art against him, so she retreated step by step back towards the hilltop. From above, she heard the cries of the disciples and saw some of them falling down on the ground after being hit by projectiles. Dingjing Shitai calmed herself down and thought to herself that the enemies' martial arts were weaker at the hilltop and should be easier to deal with. So she quickly rushed back up and jumped over some of the disciples and also passed over Ling Huchong's head. Ling Huchong called out to her, Iro, what are you doing? Do you think you're jumping over a chicken here? You're already so old, but still joking around. Jumping over my head to go here and there. Do you think I can still gamble after this? Dingjing Shitai was hurrying, trying to break through the enemy's trap, so she didn't hear those words. But Yilin apologized. Sorry, my martial uncle didn't do it on purpose. Wait, martial uncle is referring to Dingjing Shitai? Okay. If you say so. Ling Huchong grumbled and complained. I already said earlier that there were thieves here, but none of you believed me. But in his heart he was thinking, I saw earlier that the Devil Sect people were setting up an ambush on the hilltop, but apparently they also have people at the bottom. Even though Hengshang School has many people here, they're all crowded in the middle of this narrow pass, so they can't display their skills. The situation is not encouraging at all. When Dingjing Shitai arrived at the hilltop, she suddenly saw the shadow of a stick moving. A Buddhist steel staff was coming towards her head. The enemies have adjusted so that their better skilled people were now fighting her. Dingjing Shitai thought, Today, if I don't manage to break through this pass, I'm afraid these disciples will be annihilated. She leaned to one side and thrust her sword out in an angle. The Buddhist staff missed her body by only a few inches. She then shot forward and plunged her sword towards the monk. In making this move, she disregarded her own life, as it was potentially disastrous to both people. That monk tried hard to protect himself, but it was too late. He scoffed lightly as the sword pierced the side of his body. But that monk was extremely brave. Uttering a cry, he broke the long sword in two with his fist. His fist was bloodied as it hit the sword. Dingjing Shitai shouted, Quickly, get up here! Give me a sword! Yihu flew up and held her sword horizontally. She shouted, Martial uncle, sword! Dingjing Shitai turned her body around to take the sword, but a spear was thrust slantingly towards Yihu, while another spear was thrust towards Dingjing Shitai. Yihu had to use her sword to ward off the attack, which allowed the spear-wielding person to close in on her bit by bit. This also forced Yihu to retreat back down the slope. With this happening, Yihu wasn't able to pass the sword to Dingjing Shitai. In the meantime, the three people charged onto the hilltop, 2 with sabers and the other one with a judge's pen, surrounding Dingjing Shitai. Ding Jing Shutai's two palms were flitting about using Hengshang School's Heaven's Palm to ward off the attack from the four people. She was already around 60 years old, but her hands were still, well, she's 60, but her hands were still agile. Unexpectedly, she was holding her own, using only her bare hands, even though the four masters from the Devil sect were fighting cooperatively against her. Yilin was frightened and whispered, "Aiyo, what do I do now? What do I do?" Ling Huchong said with a loud voice, "These small-time thieves are too unruly. Make way, make way. General is going up there to capture these thieves." Yilin worriedly said, "You mustn't go. They're not small-time thieves. All of them have good martial art. If you go up there, then they'll kill you." Ling Huchong puffed up his chest and shouted boldly, "Under a sunny day." Then he raised his head up to the sky. It was almost daybreak, but it wasn't a sunny day. But he didn't care and continued, "These small-time thieves are cutting off the road and plundering people, bullying women. Huh, aren't they afraid of the law?" "They're not ordinary women. Enemies are also not small-time thieves cutting off the road and plundering people," said Yilin. Ling Huchong took a big step going up the slope. He squeezed through the female disciples to go up. The female disciples were staying close to the side of the cliff face and allowed him to go up. When Ling Huchong reached the hilltop, he extended his hand to pull out his Yao Dao saber. As a fraction of the saber was pulled out, he suddenly stopped and pretended that he couldn't pull the saber out anymore. He scolded, "Your granny, this saber is looking for trouble. When an important matter comes up, it suddenly becomes rusted. How can General capture thieves with a rusted saber?" Yihu was fighting for her life against one of the Devil Sect's people on the hilltop when she heard Ling Huchong behind her talking nonsense about his sword rusting and why he couldn't pull out his sword. She was angry, but also found it funny. She shouted, "Quick, go away. It's dangerous up here." As she called out she lost her concentration slightly, and her defense wasn't as tight. With a fierce sound, a spear was thrust forward and nearly hit her shoulder. Yihu retreated half a step while that person thrust his spear again. Ling Huchong shouted, "That's wrong! That's wrong! Bold thieves, don't you see General standing right here?" In a flash, he slanted his body and was in front of Yihu. The spear-wielding man was startled. As the sky was gradually becoming brighter, he was able to see his clothes were like those that government officials wear. Just at that moment, even though his spear was pointing at the officer's chest, he didn't thrust it forward. He shouted, "Who are you?" Before this, someone was calling out from the... Wait, who's saying that? Oh, it was the enemy. "Who are you? Before this, someone was calling out from the bottom of the hill. Was it you, government dog?" Ling Huchong rebuked, "Your granny, are you calling me a government dog? You're a thief dog. You're here cutting off the road and plundering, and even though General is here, you still haven't run away. You're the real outlaw. After General has captured you, I'm going to send you to the local authority. With 50 planks each, you all are going to be beaten until your bottom is swollen and you are calling out for your mommy." The spear-wielding man didn't want to kill a government official, but he was greatly annoyed and shouted, "Scram, you rotten egg! If you talk nonsense again, I'll poke 3 holes through your government dog's body." Ling Huchong saw Ding Jing Shutai had not been defeated yet, and the Devil Sect people had stopped shooting projectiles and throwing rocks down the slope. He shouted, "Bold thieves, quickly kneel down and kowtow. If General sees your 80-year-old mother in your home, then maybe I'll go easy on you. If not, I'll chop everyone's head off." When the Hengshang School's disciples heard this, they all scowled and shook their heads. They all had the same thought. This person is crazy. Yihu walked up a step with her sword up. If the enemy thrusts his spear towards the general, then it's going to be easier for her to block it. Ling Huchong used his strength to pull out his saber again and then scolded, "Your granny, Just before battle, my precious saber from my ancestor has suddenly become rusted. Huh, if only my precious saber were not rusted, all of your small-time thieves' heads would have been chopped off. Oh, you like the your granny insult? Your granny? That man wielding the spear laughed loudly and shouted, Go back to your mum. Then he swept his spear towards Ling Huchong's waist. Ling Huchong was hit and pushed down, but at the same time he pulled out his sheath. He shouted, Ayao, and pushed his body forward. Yu shouted, Be careful. As Ling Huchong was falling down, he held his sheathed saber out and used the point of its sheath to hit the spear-wielding man's side of the small of the back. That man dropped to the ground wordlessly. With a slapping sound, Ling Huchong also fell to the ground. Then, as he struggled to get up, he shouted, Aha! You also fell down. We've both fallen down. I'm not going to concede defeat. Come on, we fight again. Yihu grabbed that man and threw him behind. She was thinking that now she had captured an enemy, things would become easier. Another 3 Devil Sect people came over to save that person. Ling Huchong called out, Aha! This is disastrous. These small-time thieves are going to refuse being captured. Ling Huchong raised his sheathed saber to the west, and his finger, on the other hand, was pointed to the east. It was completely unmethodical. Dugu 9 swords didn't have any set moves, so when it was used, it can either be graceful or clumsy and awkward, but strangely still maintaining the same power. This was because the Dugu 9 swords concentrated on the sword intention, not set moves. He was now thrusting his sword towards an enemy's various acupoints without any great force. During a fight, it would be difficult to accurately hit people's acupoints, but a refined sword art with vigorous internal energy attached to the strike, even if it wasn't that accurate, might still perhaps hit the side of the acupoints. So considering this, the enemy in front of him continuously protected himself, following Ling Huchong's sheathed saber wherever it went. At the same time, Ling Huchong was staggering, looking like he was about to fall down, and waving his sheathed saber about, when suddenly the points of the scabbard hit that enemy's stomach. That person gasped and went limp. Ling Huchong yelled, Aha! And jumped back a step. At the same time, his sword handle hit the back of another enemy's shoulder. That person immediately fell down and swayed back and forth on the ground. Ling Huchong continued to step back and tripped on that person's body. He scolded him, Your granny! And kicked his body away. So he's pretending to be a bumbling fool, but he's actually just like kicking these guys' asses. Then his sword handle inadvertently hit a Devil Sect person wielding a saber. This person was one of the 3 masters besieging Dingjing Shitai. The back of his body was hit, and he dropped his sword. Dingjing Shitai took this opportunity to hit his chest, making that person sprout blood from his mouth, and life fled from his body. Ling Huchong called out, Careful, careful! While he retreated a few steps and was about to bump into the back of the person holding the judge's pen. That person quickly sent his pen back to protect himself. Ling Huchong staggered and dashed forward whilst waving his scabbard around. Soon more Devil Sect people were hit and fell down. That person wielding the judge's pen was greatly annoyed and rushed at Ling Huchong. Ling Huchong yelled, Mommy! As he pulled up and ran away with that person pursuing him. Ling Huchong suddenly stopped and bent his waist forward, while at the same time poked his sword handle through his armpit. That person never expected him to be able to run so fast and suddenly stop motionless in an instant. Although his martial arts was already high, he was still inferior. He quickly applied a downward force to stop, but his chest was still hit by Ling Huchong's extended sword handle. That person's face showed an extremely odd expression. He couldn't believe what just happened, but his body had slowly started to fall down. Ling Huchong turned around and saw the fighting on the hilltop had ceased. A few of the Hangshang school's disciples had already gone up the slope. Both the Orthodox and Devil sect people were now facing each other, while the remaining disciples were quickly rushing up the slope. He shouted, "Hey, small-time thieves, you've seen General here. Quickly, kneel down and surrender. Really strange." He then started to dance his sheathed saber around, cried out and He then started to dance his sheathed saber around, cried out and charged towards the cluster of Devil sect people. The Devil sect people quickly sent out their swords and spears. Hangshan school disciples were about to go forward and help when they heard Ling Huchong shout, "Skillful, skillful, very fierce thieves!" And he came out from the cluster of Devil sect people. His steps were heavy, and he was dragging his feet through the mud as he ran. He missed a few steps and fell down. His scabbard shot up and hit his own forehead, making him dizzy. But he had already managed to hit 5 people as he entered and exited the cluster of Devil sect people. Both groups were dumbfounded, looking at him. Both Yu He and Yi Qing rushed forward and asked, "General, are you all right?" Both of Ling Huchong's eyes were closed. He didn't answer them, pretending to have passed out. The leader of the Devil sect group saw that one person had died, and this lunatic general had hit 11 of his people. Just now, when the general charged at his party, he made his moves one after another to grab the general, but all of his moves ended up with him in danger of being hit by the scabbard. Although the scabbard was not attacking any acupoints, it was coming in swift and fierce with its weird positioning. He didn't know this person's background, but sensed that his martial art was high and its true depth couldn't be measured. He then saw the people who had been hit. The Hangshan school had now captured 5 of them. Today, everything had gone pear-shaped. He shouted with a clear voice, "Dingjing Shitai! Do you want the antidotes for your disciples who got hit by the projectiles?" I need a more evil voice for this guy. Dingjing Shitai already saw that those disciples who got hit by the projectiles fell into a coma and couldn't be woken up. The injuries made by the projectiles were also leaking black blood. She knew that the projectiles were poisoned. When she heard his words, she already had a clear idea of what to do. She shouted, "Give us the antidotes in exchange for your people." That person nodded his head and muttered something under his breath. One of the Devil sect people took out a porcelain bottle and stood in front of Dingjing Shitai and bowed slightly. Dingjing Shitai took the bottle and fiercely said, "If the antidote is effective, then I'll release them myself." That old person said, "All right. Hangshan's is Dingjing Shitai. I'm not the kind of person who eats his own words." He waved his hands, and the Devil sect people went down the west slope, taking their injured and dead people with them. A short time later, all of them had left the hilltop, leaving their 5 captured comrades. After a long time, Ling Huchong woke up and called out, "Ouch! It hurts so much!" as he rubbed his swollen forehead. Then, with a surprised tone, he asked, Where did all those thieves go?" Yihu giggled and said, "General, you're really strange. Just then, it was lucky that you somehow hit a number of them when you charged at their group. The leader of those small-time thieves was truly frightened by you." Ling Huchong laughed loudly and said, "Wonderful, wonderful. Big General has such a big reputation. When I ride out to confront these small-time thieves, of course it's a different matter altogether. They would certainly run away with their tails between their legs. Hi-yo." Then he rubbed his forehead again with his face showing a painful expression. "General, have you been injured? We have some medicine," said Yi Qing. Ling Huchong answered proudly, No, I'm not injured. When a gentleman dies in the battlefield, it's a common thing." Yi pursed her lips and said, "I'm afraid it's ma ge guo xu." Okay, well. They're talking. He's saying some common idiom, and he's saying it wrong. Apparently, Yiqing gave her a stern look and said, "You always love to find other people's fault. What's the point of pointing out his fault?" Ling Huchang said, "We people from the north learns Ma Gu Lu Shi. You southern people must have learned it differently." Yihe turned her head and said, "But we're also from the north." Alright, the translator is talking to us. Ma Ge Guo Shi is a phrase that means to die in the battlefield. When this is translated literally, it means corpse wrapped in horse's skin. But what Ling Huchang said was Ma Ge Lu Shi, which has no meaning. He deliberately replaced the word Guo with Lu. Master Dingjing went to the injured disciples and gave them the antidote for the poison. When she reached Ling Huchang, she bowed to him and said, "I am Hang Shang's old nun Dingjing. May I ask for young hero's name?" Ling Huchang's heart shivered in fear. This Hangshan School senior really has good eyesight. She knows that I'm still young, and also that I'm actually a brave general. He immediately bowed and clasped his fist respectfully, returning the bow. He said, "As Shi Tai requested, my surname is Wu. My name is Tian. Tian from Tian En Hao Jiang, enormous graciousness. De from Dao De Wenzhang, morality. I'm going to Changzhou government office to take up office." Dingjing Shutai already expected that he wouldn't reveal his real identity, and he might not necessarily be a real general. She said, "Today, my Hangshang school has met difficulty, and General has helped us. I don't know how to repay your virtue and kindness. General's martial art is very deep. Although this poor nun has taken a look at it, I still don't know which school General comes from. Really admirable." Ling Huchang laughed loudly and said, "Old Shi Tai flatters me, but to be honest, my martial art has a few foundations. On the top, snow falling from the sky. At the bottom, ancient tree root. In the middle, black tiger stealing heart. Ayo, ayo." As he was talking, his hands and feet were moving about, showing off the martial arts moves. It looked like he had too much. It looked like he had used too much force in his demonstration and had strained himself. He rubbed his aching joints while his eyes stole a look towards Yilin. She was startled, and for a moment it looked as if she had something to say. He thought, "My martial sister has a really good conscience. I wonder how she will react if she knew that I'm the general." Naturally, Dingjing Shutai was aware that he was pretending. She smiled and said, "General doesn't want to reveal himself since he's an honorable man. This poor nun can only burn the incense stick from morning till dusk to pray for the general's good fortune and health. Best wishes to General." Ling Huchang said, Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Please pray to Buddha for my promotion and wealth. Little General will also pray for the safety of old Shi Tai and all the little Shi Tai on your journey, for bad luck to turn to good, and for all matters to go smoothly." Ha 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 ha. As he was laughing loudly, he bowed deeply to Dingjing Shutai and swaggered away. Alright, 5-minute break, you guys? 5-minute break. Okay, I'm back. Alright. So he just saved the Hangshan school. And how are you guys dealing with this this new translation? It's a little rough. It's a little rough, not gonna lie. But I think we're good, right? I think we can pull through. Alright, so he swaggers away. He had been in the Five Mountains Sword Alliance for a long time, so even though he was pretending to be crazy, he still didn't dare to be inappropriate towards his senior from the Hangshan school. The school disciples were now looking at him, stumbling towards the south slope. As he disappeared, they quickly surrounded Dingjing Shutai and started to barrage her with questions. Martial uncle, what's his background? Is he really insane or is he just pretending? Is his martial arts very high or was he merely lucky and mistakenly hit the enemies here and there? He doesn't resemble a general. He still looks young, am I right? Dingjing Shutai sighed and turned her head to look at the disciples injured by the projectiles. After the medicine was applied to their wounds, the black blood had turned red and their pulses straightened. They were no longer in danger. She then gave the Hangshan school's unique medicine to each of the disciples to administer it to their own injuries. After that, she released the acupoints of the 5 captured devil sects people and told them to leave. Yeah, changing the tenses is kind of weird. I agree. It makes it kind of hard to read. But yeah. But I think we get the gist of what's going on, right? She then ordered the disciples, "Everyone go under that tree to rest," while she went alone and sat on a big stone. She closed her eyes and pondered. When this person charged at the devil sect group, the leader of the group fought with him. But he still managed to hit 5 of their people. He wasn't using a martial art that aimed at the acupoints. He was using some martial art style that I didn't expect, that there was not even a slight demonstration of his school's martial art. In Wulin, there must be such a young person who's that skillful. But whose disciple is he? This person was a friend and not an enemy. This is really Hangshan School's big fortune. At mid-morning, she ordered the disciples to fetch a brush and an inkstone and a thin silk to write a letter. She ordered, Yizhi, bring the pigeon here. Yizhi answered and took a pigeon out of the bamboo cage she was carrying. In the meantime, Dingjing Shutai rolled up the thin silk letter into a thin strip and put it in a slender bamboo tube. She put the cover on and sealed it with melted wax. Then, using an iron wire, she put the bamboo tube onto the pigeon's left feet. After a silent prayer, she released the pigeon. The pigeon flew north, gradually going higher and further. Not long after, it was only a black dot in the sky. A barrage, like a whole mess of things like throwing at you. He's throwing a whole bunch of so they were throwing a barrage of questions, right? They were barraging her with questions. They're throwing a bunch of questions at her. To bombard, that's a good word. That's a good synonym. To bombard someone with something. After Dingjing Shutai released the pigeon, everyone became quiet, completely different from before when they were vigorously fighting the enemies. Dingjing Shutai raised her head to look up. She saw the black dot entering the white cloud and disappeared, but she continued to look into the distance. All the disciples didn't dare to make any sound. At the recent battle, although that clown general was jesting around and acting comical, the situation in actuality was really dangerous. It can be said that everyone had now escaped death. After standing there for a long time, Dingjing Shutai turned around and beckoned forward a 15 or 16-year-old girl. The girl immediately went and stood in front of her. She quietly called out, "Master." Dingjing Shutai lightly brushed the girl's hair to comfort her and said, Juan were you scared before?" The young girl nodded and said, "I was scared. Luckily, that general was brave and fought those bad people off." Dingjing Shutai smiled and said, "This general wasn't really brave, but his martial arts was really good." "Master, is his martial arts really that high?" I saw his moves were erratic and he was really careless. He even hit his head with his own scabbard. Also, he was saying something like his saber was rusting and couldn't pull it out of the scabbard, said that girl, unbelieving. This young lady, Qin Juan, was Dingjing Shutai's disciple. She was clever and bright, and she was really loved by her master. Between the Hangshan school disciples, 60% of them were nuns, while the rest were secular disciples. Some of them were middle aged, and there were also 50 to 60-year-old grannies. Jin Chuan was the youngest disciple in the Hangshan school. The other disciples heard Ding Shutai conversing with Marshall's sister, Qin Juan, so they slowly gathered around. Yihu interposed herself and said, "What do you mean that his moves were erratic? He was just pretending and was actually concealing his excellent martial art. That is called smart. Martial uncle, what do you think of this general's background? Which house or school is he from?" Dingjing Shutai slowly shook her head and said, "This person's martial arts might be immeasurably deep. I don't know how else to describe him, except with these two words." Jin Chuan asked, "Master, what was that letter for martial uncle? Do you think it will get hit there soon?" Dingjing Shutai said, "When the pigeon gets to Suzhou's Bai Yi temple, they will exchange it with another pigeon. At Jinyan Miaoxiang temple, they will change it to another pigeon. Again, at the mouth of the old river at Qingqing temple, they will use another pigeon. The latter will arrive in Hangshan after the use of these 4 pigeons." Yuhu said, "Unfortunately, we didn't lose anyone. I believe those several... Oh wait, no. Fortunately, we didn't lose anyone. I believe those several martial sisters who got hit by the projectiles won't be a big hindrance after 2 days, while those who got hit by the rocks, we also don't have to worry about them losing their lives." Dingjing Shutai was lost in her own thoughts, so she didn't hear what Yihu just said. She was thinking, currently, Hangshan School's position and movements in the south is a secret. We've been sleeping during the day and traveling at night. How did the Devil Sect find out and manage to set up an ambush here? She then turned her head towards the disciples and said, "The enemies have disappeared and wouldn't dare to come back right now. Everyone is now very tired, so we'll eat some provisions here and then sleep for a while under that tree's shade." Everyone complied with her order. Some people erected an iron trivet to boil some water for brewing tea. After eating their meal, they slept for a few hours till around noon. Dingjing Shutai looked at the wary expressions of the injured disciples. She said, "The enemies have discovered our movements, so there's no need for us to travel at night anymore. Those injured must also recuperate. Tonight, we'll rest at an inn in Nianbapu." They went down the hill and after several hours reached Nianbapu. It was an important location for transportation between Zhejiang and Fujian province for people traveling through the Xianxia mountain range. As they neared the small town, the sky had not darkened yet. Unexpectedly, there was not a single person inside the small town. Yihu said, "Fujian's custom is really weird. Fujian's custom is really weird. It's still so early, but everyone went to sleep already." Define trivet. Wah! Some people erected an iron trivet to boil some water for brewing tea. Oof. A trivet, eh? Oof. I'm thinking, I'm thinking, I'm thinking, I'm thinking. I'm thinking. What is an iron trivet? could be one of those sticks that you put up and then you hang a pot over it to boil some water over a fire. Or it could be something that you like a grill that you put over a fire, and then you put put a pot over it. Erect an iron trivet. All right. It's like something that you put over a fire and then you put a pot on top of it. Okay? That's what I think. Trivet. Aha! An iron tripod or bracket for a cooking pot or kettle to stand on. That works, right? Or a small plate placed under a hot serving dish to protect the table or surface. I think I accidentally guessed the right answer. It was accidentally. It was an accident. But I guessed the right answer. Ding Jing Shutai looked at the wary expression. Wait. Yihu said, Fujian's custom is really weird. It's still so early, but everyone went to sleep already. Ding Jing Shutai said, let's go further to get lodgings for the night. I didn't say tripod, but it doesn't have to be a tripod. It can be a bracket. So it's something for a kettle to stand on. Right? I think that works. I think that works. Yeah, it also said plate. Look, a small plate. I think I'm right. Come on. You gotta give that to me. That was such a good guess. That was such a good guess. Even though Hangshan School has contact with every temple in Wulin, there was no temple to stay in at Nianbapu, so they had to find an inn to spend the night. It was inconvenient that normal people had a taboo against nuns and frequently caused trouble because they believed that seeing nuns brought them bad luck. It was good that the nuns were accustomed to receiving this kind of treatment and never held a grudge. But now they saw all the stores on the street were closed and boarded up. Nianbapu was neither big nor small, but it had around 200 stores and inns. But as they looked around, the town resembled a ghost town. The setting sun was still providing some light, but Nianbapu's streets were deserted, as if it were in the middle of the night. The disciples were on the street looking around when they noticed a white cloth hanging on a pole in front of an inn. The words Xian An Inn were written in big letters on the cloth. The inn's big door was shut, and there was no sound at all on the street. One of the disciples, named Zheng E, knocked on the door. Zheng E was a secular disciple. She had a round face and was always carrying a smile. She was good at talking and very likable. Whenever the nuns had to deal with people on the road, Zheng E was always the one to do it. This was to prevent other people from seeing nuns and becoming agitated. Yeah, so in the school there were mostly nuns, right? But there were also disciples that were not nuns. Okay, they didn't have to shave their head and stuff like that. Zheng E knocked on the door a few times, stopped a while, and then knocked a few more times. After waiting for a long time, no one answered the door. Zheng E called out, "Uncle, please open the door." Her voice was clear and carried far, just like people who have practiced martial arts. Even people several courtyards away would be able to hear it. But there was no answer from inside the inn. The situation was clearly very strange. Yihu went forward and put her ear on the door. No sound could be heard from the inside. She turned her head and said, "Marshal uncle, there's no one inside." Yeah, what is wrong with this town? There's something fishy going on. Oh, Galaxy Wolf, thank you so much. Well, I love your voice too. I'm sure if I heard your voice, I would love it. Yeah, very sus, this town. Dingjing Shutai secretly felt something wasn't right. She saw the sign for the inn was still new. The doors' board had also been washed clean recently. It didn't look like a place that had gone out of business at all. She said, "We'll keep going and take a look around. This town must have more than one inn." They kept walking forward and passed several more shops before they saw another inn named Nan An Inn. Zheng E went to knock on the door again, but the result was still the same. No one answered. Zheng E said, "Sister Yihu, let's go in and take a look." "Okay," answered Yihu, and they both jumped the wall to go in. "Anyone here?" asked Zheng E. When no one answered, they pulled their swords out and walked into the main hall of the inn. They took a look around the kitchen, the barn, and every room in the inn, but they still didn't see anyone. But they observed that there was no dust on the table or the chairs. Also, the teapot on top of a table was still warm. Zheng E opened the main door to let Dingjing Shutai enter and to report the situation. Everyone thought that the situation was really strange. Dingjing Shutai commanded, Get seven people into a group. Go around the town and ask what's going on. Don't go too far. If you see signs of enemies, then whistle out." They acknowledged her order and quickly went out the door. Only Dingjing Shutai remained inside the main hall. Before long, the sounds of the disciples' footsteps have disappeared, and no more sound was heard. The stillness of this Nianba Pu town made the hair on the back of Dingjing Shutai's neck stand up. The town was so big, but not a sound was heard. There was not even a small sound of birds chirping or dogs barking. This was really strange. Dingjing Shutai suddenly felt uneasy. Could it be that this is the devil sex's trap? The female disciples don't have much experience traveling the Jianghu. They might be deceived and can easily fall into a trap. She walked to the door and saw shadows moving in the northeast. From the west, she also saw some people moving into other people's houses. They were all Hangshan School's disciples. She felt slightly relieved after seeing them. After some time, the disciples returned. They all reported the same thing. There was no one in the town. "Not just people. We also couldn't see any animals around," added Yihu. Yiqing said, "I think they haven't been gone for too long. There were opened chests and baskets inside the houses. They seem to have taken all the money." Dingjing Shutai nodded and asked, "What do you think is going on?" Yihu answered, "I'm guessing that the devil sect people have chased out all the townspeople just recently to launch an attack." "Correct. This time the devil sect wants to fight us again. That's very good. Are you all scared?" said Dingjing Shutai. Eradicating evil is our inherent responsibilities as Buddhists," the disciples answered together. Dingjing Shutai said, "We'll rest at this inn. We'll take our meals first. Be careful and see if the water, rice, or vegetables have been poisoned." Angshan School people did not speak while taking their meals. They were on alert and tried to listen for any sound from the outside. The first disciple to finish eating went out to relieve the disciples guarding outside. Yiqing suddenly thought of something and said, Marshal uncle, why don't we go out to some of the houses and light up the lamps in there? The devil sect people won't know our whereabouts. Ding Jing Shutai said, this idea is very good. You 7 people go and light up the lamps. Not long after, Ding Jing Shutai also went out the main door. She looked towards the west, and lights were showing through the windows of many houses. After some time, lights came on from the houses in the east. The streets lit up with lights from the windows, but there was still no sound to be heard. Ding Jing Shutai raised her head and looked at the moon. She prayed, Buddha, bless and protect us. Let my Hangshan school disciples escape from harm this time. If disciple Ding Jing can go back to Hangshan, then I will light up an incense and won't use my sword ever again. In her former years, she had roamed Jianghu and had many imposing achievements under her belt, but after last night's battle on Xianxia mountain range, she had lingering fear on her mind for the disciples under her command. If she were by herself, even if the situation had been 10 times more dangerous, she would not even worry about it. She prayed again, Goddess of mercy, Guan Yin, if Hangshan school people must receive injuries, let disciple Ding Jing alone receive that disaster for retribution, for killing people. Let disciple alone bear this. Suddenly she heard a female's voice shouting from the northeast, Help! Help! The shrill voice sounded sorrowful. Ding Jing Shutai was alarmed. The voice did not sound like any of her school's disciples. She squinted her eyes, looking towards the northeast, and did not see any movement. She then saw Yi Qing and 6 disciples go towards the northeast. She waited, where she was watching what was going on. After a long time, Yi Qing and her group still had not come back. Yi He said, Marshal uncle, disciple, and 6 disciple sisters will go take a look. She said, Yi He said, Marshal uncle, disciple, and 6 disciple sisters will go take a look. Ding Jing Shutai nodded her head. Yi He quickly led 6 disciples and... I messed up her voice. There's so many voices. This seems like an SCP. Yeah, it's like a ghost town. What's going on? Suddenly, the flashing of a sword appeared briefly, and the same female's voice was heard shrieking, Someone's murdered! Help! Help! I don't trust this voice, you guys. Hangshan school disciples crowded together to have a look. They did not know what was going on there. The voice originated from where Yi Qing and Yi He's two groups had gone before. It seemed like they had met the enemies, but there was no sound of fighting. They then heard that female's voice shrilly shouting again, Help! Everyone looked at Ding Jing Shutai, waiting for her to command them to go and help. Ding Jing Shutai said, Yu Xiao, take 6 disciple sisters to check that area. No matter what you see, you must immediately come back. Yu Xiao was a 40-year-old middle-aged woman. She was originally Ding Xian Shutai's servant from Hangshan Baiyun Temple. Later, Ding Xian Shutai saw that she was capable and accepted her as a disciple. This trip with Ding Jing Shutai was her first experience in the Jianghu. Yu Xiao, the Jianghu is like the martial arts world. Yu Xiao bowed to comply with Ding Jing Shutai's order. Then she took 6 disciple sisters to go towards the northeast. But none of these 7 people came back either. Ding Jing Shutai became more frightened, suspecting that the disciples had fallen into the enemy's trap, enticed by the enemy and captured one by one. They waited for a while longer, but there was not the slightest bit of movement, and there were no more calls for help either. Ding Jing Shutai said, Yi Ji, Yi Zhen, wait here and tend to the injured sisters. No matter what happens, you mustn't leave the inn, so as to prevent the enemy from luring you out. Yi Ji and Yi Zhen bowed, acknowledging the order. Ding Jing Shutai said to the 3 young disciples, Zheng E, Yi Lin, and Qin Zhuan, You 3, come with me. Well, she's taking the youngest disciples with her? I don't know if that's such a good idea. while pulling out her longsword and starting out to the northeast. When they got nearer, they saw a big house where the lamps have been extinguished. The area was dark and no sound was heard. Dingjing Shutai fiercely shouted, "Devil sect witch, come out and fight! What kind of heroic deeds is it, ambushing people like this?" After waiting for a while, they still did not hear anyone answering from inside the house. So Dingjing Shutai flew and kicked the main door of the big house. The door latch broke and the door banged open. It was dark inside the house, and Dingjing Shutai could not tell if there was anyone in there, so she didn't dare to rashly charge in. She inquired, "You here, Yiqing, Yu Xiao? Do you hear my voice?" Her voice was loud and it traveled far. She then heard her echo from somewhere far. Once the echo died out, the place was completely quiet again. Dingjing Shutai turned her head around and said, "The three of you follow behind me closely." She brandished her sword as she went around the outside of the house, but didn't find anything unusual. So she jumped on top of the house and squinted her eyes to look around the four directions. There was no wind at all, and the tree branches were still. The cold moon's light shone on the tiles. The scenery was just like that in Hangshan, where she was strolling beneath the moon. But in Hangshan, there was a feeling of tranquility, while in this place, there was a feeling of surreptitiousness and murderous air. Dingjing Shutai was using her whole body to sense her surrounding, but she hadn't been able to sense the enemy so far. She was really at a loss. She was feeling anxious and regretted, "I already knew that the devil sect demons would have many deceptions. I shouldn't have sent them in turns." Suddenly she shivered in fear and clapped her hands while going down the house. She quickly used her qinggong to run back towards the Nan'an Inn. She called out, Yichen, have you seen anything?" No one answered from inside the inn. She rushed in with cold sweat drenching her body, but there was no one inside the inn. The couch that the injured disciples were sleeping on had also disappeared. At this point, Dingjing Shutai thought carefully, but she had run out of ideas. The shadow casted by her sword point was quivering as reflected lights from her sword flickered around the room. The hand holding her sword was shaking. Her female disciples had suddenly disappeared without making any noise. How did this all happen? What's there to do? After a moment, she felt her lips dry, her tongue parch, and her whole body drained of energy. She felt paralyzed. Surreptitiousness, it means marked by quiet and caution and secrecy, taking pains to avoid being observed, obviously. Thank you, beginning human. I appreciate it. But this weakness was only momentary as she took a deep breath and gathered her qi in the Dantian region. With her vigor immediately restored, she quickly went from room to room. She found nothing unusual in those rooms. She called out, Juaner, come in here. So the is like a term of endearment. So, yeah, so these young disciples are very close to her. But in the midst of the night, she could only hear her own voice. There was no sound from Zheng E, Qin Chuan, and Yi Lin. Dingjing Shutai muttered, "Not good," and quickly rushed out. Once she was outside, she shouted, Zheng E, Qin Chuan, Yi Lin, where are you?" Outside, the pale moon was shining down, and there was no trace of the three disciples. Dingjing Shutai wasn't frightened by this turn of events, but turned angry instead. She jumped up to the roof and shouted, "Devil sect demons! What type of cheap tactic is this? What kind of twin is this, ambushing people?" She cried out repeatedly, but all the area around her was very quiet, and not a single sound was heard. As she was continuously calling out, it seemed that she was the only remaining person inside the Nianbapu town. There was nothing she could do. Suddenly, she shouted with a clear voice, Devil sect demons, listen to me. You still don't want to appear? So, Dongfang Bubai's disciples are shameless and gutless. Don't dare You don't dare to face me and my school's people. What Dongfang Bubai? It's merely Dongfang Bibai. Dongfang Bibai, do you dare to come out and meet this old nun? Dongfang Bibai, Dongfang Bibai, I think you're afraid. So Dongfang Bubai means Dongfang invincible, and Dongfang Bibai means Dongfang vincible. Like you can be defeated, or you are defeated. No, I'm not singing a song because I told you what the definition was. How did you know I didn't know? Hmm? Hmm? She knew that when any devil sect people heard someone insulting their chief's reputation, then they would have to come out and risk their lives in defending it. This was a big matter for them. Sure enough, after she called out a few Dongfang Bibai, 7 people rushed out from inside a house. Oh, it worked. They quietly jumped on the roof and surrounded her. Dingjing Shutai felt happy now that the enemies had appeared. She thought, finally, you demons have come out after being scolded by me, wanting to cut me up and cut my corpse in two. This is better than not seeing their shadows at all. No, this is better than not seeing their shadows at all. But these 7 people just stood there without saying anything. Dingjing Shutai angrily asked, Where's my disciples? Where have you taken them? Her enemies stayed quiet and didn't answer her. Dingjing Shutai saw the 2 people guarding at the west were about 50 years old. Their faces were stiff, like that of corpses, and there was no sign of anger on their faces. Boom! Done. Chapter 23, Part 1. How was that? Did you guys like that? Did you? It got a little like ghost story like in the near the end there. Yeah, so our hero saved the Hangshan school and he just left. Yeah, where is he? Did he just leave? That's weird. He just left and now they've been all captured, I guess. Yeah. And now Dingjing Shutai is the only one left. And we will see what happens next time. Be by means always be defeated. Surely be defeated. Thanks, Kunshin. Ninja townspeople, zombies. Doot 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 doot. No, I'm not singing a song. You didn't catch me. Sorry. Sorry. So them's the rules. That was the rule. He got spooky at the end. Yeah. Are we changing protagonists? Good questions. Good question. I know the answer, but I'm not gonna tell you. So this is Dingjing Shutai of the Hangshan school, okay? And the Hangshan school has three famous Shutais. So Dingjing is one of them, and the other 2 were Ding Xian and Ding something. Yeah. So this is one of the 3. What are the snacks? I'm eating this. Oh wait, sorry. This is Pocky. Pocky. Okay, it is a strawberry. It's crunchy strawberry. All right. So I was gonna buy some wine for the stream this week, and I forgot. So I have no wine. But what I do have is freaking this, some tequila. So I guess I'm gonna drink this, and then we end the stream, okay? It's usually way too strong. Ugh. I only put in half a shot. Alright. Here you go. But next week, I'll remember to buy some wine. Alright. Cheers. Thanks for watching. That's really good. Love it. All right, guys. Thanks for joining. I love you. I'll see you next week. Bye.